Welcome to Little English Studio, where English learning meets the inspiring stories of the world's greatest people. Here, we tell powerful life journeys in clear and simple English, so you can improve your English while discovering lessons of success, struggle, and hope. Today, we bring you the incredible story of Steve Jobs, the boy who loved electronics, who built a company in a small garage, who changed the way we use computers, music, phones, and even how we think about design. From adoption to rejection, from failure to glory, from being fired from his own company to becoming one of the most admired innovators in history, this is the story of Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955 in San Francisco, California, but his life began with a challenge. His biological parents, a graduate student named Joanne Skeebel and a Syrian student named Abdulfatah Jandali, were not married and could not raise him. So Steve was put up for adoption. He was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, a working-class couple. Paul was a machinist and mechanic. Clara worked as an accountant. They could not give Steve a rich life, but they gave him love, stability, and encouragement. Steve later said, "My biological mother wanted me to be adopted by college graduates, but fate gave me parents who were not college graduates, yet they were perfect for me." Paul Jobs introduced young Steve to electronics. In their garage, Paul showed him how to take things apart and put them back together. Steve learned the joy of building and fixing. This garage would later become the place where history was made. Steve grew up in Cupertino, California, a place that would later become famous as the heart of Silicon Valley. As a child, Steve was restless, curious, and sometimes rebellious. He did not always follow the rules in school, but his teachers noticed his intelligence and creativity. One teacher even had to bribe him with candy to get him to do his work. But when Steve was interested in something, he would go all in. As a teenager, Steve became fascinated by electronics and gadgets. He joined a local electronics club called the Hewlett-Packard Explorers Club. There, he saw engineers working on real computers for the first time. It was like magic to him. It was also here that he met another boy who shared his passion, a shy, brilliant engineer named Steve Wozniak. This friendship would change both their lives. After high school, Steve Jobs went to Reed College in Oregon. But college life did not satisfy him. The classes were expensive and he did not feel passionate about most subjects. After just 6 months, Steve dropped out. But instead of leaving completely, he continued to audit classes, attending those he found interesting without being officially enrolled. One of those classes was calligraphy. Steve was fascinated by the beauty of fonts and typography. Years later, he would say, "If I had never dropped in on that calligraphy class, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts." This showed how even the most random experiences can shape the future. During this period, Steve lived simply. He slept on the floors of friends' dorm rooms, returned Coke bottles for money, and walked long distances to get free meals at a local temple. It was a difficult but formative time. By the mid-1970s, Steve reconnected with Steve Wozniak. Wozniak had designed a small computer for hobbyists. It was simple but powerful for its time. Steve Jobs immediately saw the potential. Jobs convinced Wozniak that they could sell the computer to others. With this idea, and with the help of Ronald Wayne, they founded Apple Computer in 1976, inside the garage of Jobs' parents. The name Apple was chosen because Jobs liked the sound of it. It was friendly, simple, and came before Atari in the phone book. Their first product was the Apple I. They sold it as a circuit board without a case, power supply, or keyboard, but it sold well to hobbyists. Then came the Apple II in 1977. This was a turning point. It was one of the first successful personal computers, with a plastic case, color graphics, and easy-to-use design. Apple Computer quickly became a fast-growing company. By age 25, Steve Jobs was a multimillionaire. Steve Jobs was not just interested in making money. He wanted to make computers that were beautiful, simple, and for everyone. He believed technology should be friendly, not intimidating. In 1984, Apple released the Macintosh. The launch was legendary, with the famous 1984 Super Bowl commercial that promised a revolution against Big Brother. The Macintosh was the first mass-market computer with a graphical user interface, controlled with a mouse. It changed how people thought about computers, but behind the scenes, trouble was growing. Jobs was a demanding and sometimes difficult leader. He clashed with John Sculley, the CEO he had hired from Pepsi. Eventually, in 1985, Steve Jobs was forced out of Apple, the very company he had created. Jobs later said, "It was awful tasting medicine, but I guess the patient needed it. Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick, don't lose faith. After leaving Apple, Jobs did not give up. He founded a new company called NeXT. The computers were advanced and beautifully designed, but too expensive for mass success. Still, NeXT's technology would later play a crucial role in Apple's future. At the same time, Jobs bought a small graphics company from George Lucas. That company was Pixar. With Jobs' vision and support, Pixar produced the first fully computer-animated film, Toy Story, in 1995. It was a massive success, making Pixar the most famous animation studio in the world. This proved Steve Jobs was not just a computer guy, he was also a storytelling visionary. By the mid-1990s, Apple was struggling. Its products were outdated and the company was losing money. In 1997, Apple decided to buy NeXT, bringing Steve Jobs back to the company he founded. At first, he returned as an advisor, but soon he became CEO again. This marked the beginning of Apple's greatest comeback. Jobs simplified Apple's product line, focusing on a few great products instead of many. In 1998, Apple released the iMac, a colorful, friendly-looking computer that became a hit. Steve Jobs once said, "Design is not just what it looks like and feels like, design is how it works." This philosophy guided everything Apple did. In the 2000s, Steve Jobs led Apple into a golden age of innovation. In 2001, Apple launched the iPod, a small music player that put 1,000 songs in your pocket. It changed the way people listened to music. In 2003, Apple opened the iTunes Store, revolutionizing the music industry. In 2007, Apple unveiled the iPhone. It was not just a phone, it was a computer, a music player, a camera, and more, all in your hand. The iPhone transformed how humans communicate. In 2010, Apple introduced the iPad, creating a whole new category of devices. These products did not just sell millions, they reshaped industries and culture itself. Steve Jobs was known for his intense personality. He could be harsh and demanding. But he also had an extraordinary ability to inspire people to achieve the impossible. He believed in simplicity, focus, and perfection. He once said, "Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower." Another of his most famous quotes was from a Stanford speech in 2005. "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Stay hungry, stay foolish." In 2003, Steve Jobs was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. He tried to fight it with alternative treatments at first, before eventually undergoing surgery. For years, he continued working while battling his illness, but by 2011, his health had declined. In August 2011, he resigned as Apple's CEO, saying, "I have always said if there ever came a day when I could no longer meet my duties and expectations as Apple's CEO, I would be the first to let you know." Unfortunately, that day has come. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56. The world mourned. People left flowers and apples outside Apple stores. Leaders, creators, and millions of ordinary people remembered him as a man who changed the world. Steve Jobs' impact is still felt today. Apple remains one of the most valuable companies in the world. Pixar continues to inspire children and adults with its stories. Jobs proved that technology can be art, that design matters, and that passion can move the world forward. His life teaches us that even from humble beginnings, even after failure, one can rise again to achieve greatness. As Jobs once said, "The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." This was the story of Steve Jobs, the dreamer, the innovator, the leader who believed in simplicity, beauty, and courage. From an adopted child to a college dropout, from a garage to global influence, from failure to the greatest comeback in business history, his journey shows us the power of vision and perseverance. Stay hungry, stay foolish.